Stay up to date with Mother Nature and the Eco News Report, Sundays at noon on KFUG.
Get a little bit closer to that mic.
You got it?
I'm sorry, are we already on the... God,
I asked, are you ready?
At least give me a finger point or something. You gave me two of them earlier.
That's right.
God, I can't even get
Oh, man.
Can't even get the heads up.
This is going to be fun.
I keep going Orson Welles. You keep bringing John Houseman here on
right,
me, and this
yeah. Yeah.
KFUG Community Radio 1033 The Time. Paul Kritz with you, Community Service, along with KFUG News Director Mike Thornton. We have a guest in the studio today, Susan Masten. How you doing today, Susan?
Good morning.
Good morning. So you will be, I was out setting stuff up and recording all of this, but you will be sworn in as District 5 Supervisor sometime this week?
Yes, and so to give people an opportunity to be able to participate in the process, I could have just had a notary public and do the oath of office that way.
Oh, that's no fun.
But I really wanted for people to be able to share in this with me, because are a lot of people who believe in me and are supporting me, and I want them to be able to be there. And so right now it's being worked out to be sure if Judge Cochran can be there and to schedule the Board of Supervisors chambers to do the swearing in. So it will most likely happen. We're hoping Friday at 4 p.m.
Friday at 4, but really that's still squishy. That's
still,
to be
it hasn't been
okay.
confirmed. We have to confirm with the judge.
Wow. There's so many things that we need to talk about, but you are our supervisor as we sit here in District 5. So I've got some issues with the trash that I needed to know. We need to talk transfer station, some homeless people who've been,
just a few minor issues.
It's and it comes down to it's who you know. So in the wow, where to begin? This is first off, the appointment from Governor Newsom comes down this last week, right?
Correct.
And now you had we talked a little bit off mic too. You knew something was going on out there, that your name was being sort of bandied about as possible supervisor appointee, correct?
Well, actually, I didn't know.
You didn't know.
I guess my name was being thrown around for about 2 months. And so no one talked to me about it yet.
Nothing? What's
though.
the old wives' tale? You didn't get an itchy palm or something?
No,
Everybody
I had no clue. And
Wow.
so the first that I heard of it was I got a call from a couple of county elected people, and they asked me, would I be willing to serve if the governor made an appointment? And I said, of course, I would love to serve my district. We've been without a representative for a long time, and well, now we will have a representative, but we wouldn't have had one through November or December before they would actually take the seat.
Right.
So, of course, I want to be able to contribute. I'm driven by helping make a difference in my community. That's what my life has been about. And so I'm really excited about this opportunity to represent everyone, and that includes because I'm a county elected, I hope to be a county elected official. I'm just an appointee now. But I'm hoping, that representing all the people is important to me. And so, I had planned before I was appointed to hold town hall meetings in each of the precincts in my district.
Wow.
Because it's important to me to hear what people's concerns are, and then also what vision they have for our community, so that in my role I can carry that forward and help to address those. So that's,
even not as a supervisor, you were going to organize these meetings, these town hall meetings?
Yes, because that's important to me, and I'll still have to do the normal things in running for the position, and that is knock on as many doors as I can so that people have an opportunity to talk to me one-on-one and to see who I am and to see that, I truly care and I'm compassionate about the community I live in.
Wow. It is a lot of territory to cover, too, District 5, and a lot of disparate sort of entities and proclivities and such. How do you... now we're getting into... I want to stay... I have a very specific sort of policy or approach kind of question about just sort of melding the two approaches, having to, the interests of folks living in the Birch Tract to the interests of folks living in the Glen. What are the takeaways? What are the similarities there? Things like that. But first, I just want to discuss. I was telling Mike before, it's very seldom we have a guest on KFUG that in order for me to do my background, I read their Wikipedia page. That's an amazing thing to me. Can you just talk a little bit about your history of community activism, involvement with the tribe in Klamath, with the Yurok tribe? And I mean, you go right back. I love that Jessica's article mentions that you and your family have lived at the mouth of the Klamath since time began.
Exactly.
That's an amazing, just your personal history. Could you share some of that with us?
I'd be happy to. And so when I first came to the area, I've served in many roles. When I first came home, I was the Klamath Chamber President. There were the fish wars, and that was very controversial, and it was difficult for the parties to sit down and talk. And so I ended up being selected by the fishermen in the community to represent them in discussions with the state and the feds and commercial and sport fishermen, in order to kind of build this cohesiveness and partnership and support as we moved forward. And so that's how I first came home. So that wasn't an easy task, if you can imagine, because when people's livelihoods are threatened, it's extremely difficult. But it was a process that we went through, and today they're our strongest partners in especially undamming the Klamath, because we have a lot of people in this county who still depend on the fishery and support their families by the fishery. And I think people forget that because it's not as robust as it was, in the 60s and the 70s and 50s, but it still is alive, and there are a lot of people who depend on that resource. And so I have worked in that most of my life for restoring the fishery and ensuring that there was water for the fish. But I also was involved, as a Klamath Chamber president. I then participated on the Crescent City Chamber, and I am the past Democratic Central Committee chair. And so I was already working. I lived for a period of time. Most of my life has been in Del Norte County, living in Klamath, but I also lived for a period of time in Hoopaw, because my husband belongs to the Hoopaw tribe, and he was the chairman. And so we moved up there for probably 10 years. So while I was there, I also served on the Planning Commission for Humboldt County. I was appointed by Ryan Sundberg, and I served on the status of women for the county, and I was on the League of Women Voters. And I've been the president for Business and Professional Women. I served on Seroptimus. So I have been active. When I went to the tribal government was when the act formed, called for the organization of the Yurok tribe. Right. And because I have some unique skill sets, I sought that appointment. I got the Board of Supervisors support because it was an appointment by the Secretary of Interior, and I got the Chamber's support. And then I got the support of the Yurok people by getting petitions. And so I sought that position, and I was appointed on the transition team. And that was an organization of a government. Right. So that was creating tribal membership.
From scratch?
Yes,
was there
from
anything
scratch.
There before?
There's nothing. So looking for facilities, gathering up policies, human resources, fiscal, all of that. I looked for what was the best out there and then made it Yurok. And then we had the development, we had a base role, and the base role voted on an interim council. And the interim council had 100 people running for it.
Oh, wow. How many spots?
5. Yes. And so I was fortunate to be one of those 5. And we were tasked with the continuation of looking for funding for the tribe. And so I did a lot of trips to Washington, D.C. and got some special appropriations, and then just sought other monies that were available for us. But I also served as the primary negotiator for the tribe in those stages, and did while I was the chair and while I was the vice chair. So we developed the Constitution from scratch.
Right.
So, the form of government that we had, the representation, the powers of the government, were all decided in that process. And we went to be sure that people had input into that process. We went to meet where most people lived. And then we also did a constitutional forum where we brought in a well-known Indian attorney to go through, the different like the powers of the government.
Sure.
And each stage of it. And then just to identify who we are as a people. So because that was all encompassing, I spent most of my time focusing on those things. And that didn't give me time to continue those other activities that I had been involved in before.
Well, I mean, basically founding a nation, a sovereign entity, that's going to take a lot of work.
Yeah, one would think.
I assume. I don't know because I don't have firsthand knowledge. So when you're talking like this, I'm going, is founding mother a term? I mean, obviously you're, right there doing that same sort of work and that groundwork is just amazing. And then and I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut off your, if there was more that you wanted to share, because it's just the different areas of expertise. You kind of it seems you straddle like so many different, usually a candidate is fortunate to have maybe a couple of insights into a couple of these things, from business to indigenous and policy to environmental policy, business. I started with business and went back around to it. It's just, I'm just blown away, and I'm blown away by the fact that I had to read your Wikipedia page this morning.
I didn't even know I had one until you said that.
Yeah, there's a Wikipedia.
I wasn't even sure what it was until you said it. So I had to look it up myself. So I think I was pretty blown away just to know you could Google me and find me. The first time I heard that, it was like, what? What is this?
You have a pretty impressive resume that's out there on the web. So you were also involved in a couple of national organizations. One I'm thinking of particularly related to indigenous women in business. Is that correct?
I founded an organization called Women Empowering Women for Indian Nations. And that's because I felt it was extremely important for women to be prepared for leadership. And so we do a yearly conference, and we provide for professional and personal development so that they can be prepared for a role that they step into, but also a network and support, because it's difficult even today for a woman to be successful. And that's unfortunate, but it still exists. And so it's about creating that network of support and them knowing that there are people who care about them and support them in whatever they choose to do.
How far afield is that organization? I mean,
it's national.
A national organization?
Yeah, it's a national. And then, in most positions, and it's not because of me choosing to do certain things, but other people, have chosen me. And I always feel like you have capabilities, you have responsibilities. So when something opens where you can step in to make a difference, you need to step in and make the difference. And so by doing that and just making sure that I went after every training I possibly could to be sure that I was prepared and the best at what I did, because I had to be, because there were a lot of people who depended on me. And so in doing so, then you're at a national level too, and people recognize. And so I was lucky and fortunate and humble because people have believed in me. And so that's how you're able to stay in office and how you get into leadership roles. So I was the second woman to be elected by the tribes across the country as president of the National Congress of American Indians. And then I was fortunate to hold the number 2 seat for the National Center for Enterprise Development, which is the economic arm. But I also served here locally as the chair of the North Coast Small Business Center for a number of years, when Fran was still there. Yes, and I was the chair of that organization for a number of years. So economic development is extremely important to me, and we live in one of the poorest counties in the state, the most beautiful place in the state. and we're amongst the poorest. You know, that's not okay. We're a small community. We should be able to pull together and identify some strong, fundamentals that allow for us to go after, good paying jobs and bring those businesses in. There's ways for counties to offer incentives for that, and we should be looking for that because our children are going elsewhere and our pay scale is low. And so, you're not going to stay unless you truly care about this community and you love it and you don't want to live anywhere else. You're going to go somewhere else where you can make a living that, supports your children and supports them going to college and, allows for you to do what you want to do. So we have to create this place where our children want to stay and have good paying jobs to look forward to, and that, it's a healthy, safe community where we all can be, thrive and succeed.
I want to follow up on a lot of that with you and just remind our listeners that first off, you are tuned to KFUG FM here in Crescent City. We're speaking with Susan Masten, who is now the newly appointed 5th District County Supervisor here in Del Norte. Susan, you brought up a lot of things that are kind of near and dear to my heart because all of the issues that you talked about, the poverty, the lack of opportunity for many, and what's your vision, some specifics for addressing that? And let me just put this out there as well. I mean, I think tourism is great. I think it's dangerous to try to build an entire a community that its total economic engine is projected to be tourism, which seems like the agenda for a lot of people. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that because you're clearly way smarter than I am.
I wouldn't say that.
But seriously though, your thoughts about what can be done to improve the material conditions of the lives of the people of Del Norte County, the majority of the people who live here?
Well, because I've been involved in these business development organizations, one of the things that needs to happen for a community to be successful is you need small businesses. That's what creates economic stability. We have to go somewhere else to buy a lot of our goods and services, and we shouldn't have to. So looking for, but you also have to have people in your family who can serve as role models so that you can even think that you could be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, right.
So if you don't know, you can't have hopes and dreams unless you have role models and you can see it actually happening. I have a business. My sister has a business. I knew I could do the business. I've never been in the business, but I own Steelhead Lodge in Klamath. Mm-hmm. It's a restaurant, bar, motel, RV park.
How long have you had Steelhead?
7 years.
7 years already. Wow.
Yeah, I had to build it from scratch because it was closed 3 years.
Closed. So. Oh man, and then sit through a pandemic and all of the stuff.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, and so I knew I could do it because I had been around economic development and in those programs for some time and seeing what works and what doesn't work. And plus when I went to college, I was a bartender and a waitress. That's how I put myself through college. And so I knew I could do that piece. Mm-hmm. And I knew from managing a multi-million-dollar tribe that I could manage a budget for my business. And so I wasn't afraid to jump into that. It's an icon in the past that, and I wanted it to be as good or better than what it had ever been. And my sister bought Requa Inn, and so, having now my children and my nieces and nephews have 2 role models who have successful businesses, and they can think, oh, I can do that too. And that's really
Geneva
important.
needs somebody to look up to.
Yeah,
Geneva. Slacker that she is.
Well, and that's the other thing is education is so important because, I was the first to graduate from college. Mm. I was wondering why all my siblings graduated from college. My father didn't finish high school. He went into the U.S. Air Force, and my mother didn't finish. She got married, and no one had been to college on my father's side or my mother's side. But my grandparents and my mother always talked about the importance of education. And so I knew I was going to college. And I asked my siblings why they did, and my sister just laughed at me, and she goes, "Because you took us in, you registered us, and you picked our classes." and I didn't really remember that, but the our economics within our family have totally changed in one generation, because in the very next generation we have an attorney. We have a Geneva who is,
right.
Geneva is this whiz for community organization. She works at a foundation, and she's done some marvelous things. And everyone else went to, college too. I mean, each generation just keeps getting better and better. And so that's an important thing for me too, is education and encouraging our youth. And it doesn't have to be college. It can be something else that makes them happy, but that they're furthering their education and their skills, developing their skills, because each of us are born with unique skills. It's our job to fine-tune them so we can be the best that we can be. And talking positive to a child, that a child can be anything they want to be.
Well, and then living a life that exemplifies that fact that they can be anything that they want to be. Yeah.
And even when you come from a family that is dysfunctional, an encouraging word from one person believing in you can break a cycle. And so we just have to be more mindful in our community. We're a small community. There's no reason why we shouldn't be supporting each other and helping each other and saying a kind word once in a while.
You've got lots of experience in the business world and with the Chamber of Commerce in Klamath. And what can a supervisor, 1 of 5, sitting on a county board, actually boots on the ground do to affect just the environment of to encourage small business in a community? I mean, is there really, because so much of the economy and the big factors that are outside of our control and that move our lives and move our money around and all of this, do you really have any control over that sort of thing on a county level?
I always believe that you do. An individual does. People are what creates change. And it's not so much government that creates a change. Government is a tool to help the people be able to create effective change. And so I believe that my skill set and connections to actually create sustainable partnerships where we can pull our agencies, pull our governments together, and actually develop a strategic plan that can be implemented, is what's going to drive change and sustainable solutions.
Do you see any sort of analog between, say, the larger economic possibilities, potentialities, and just current state of affairs in Del Norte County kind of being out of the way, and maybe Del Norte will become its own niche in some sort of way? Is there an analog or an analogous relationship between that Del Norte writ large and running a successful business in the Glen? I mean, seriously. That almost seems to be a 1-to-1 correlation in a lot of ways there.
There is, and I learned early on, anything that you manage, you learn certain skill sets. And I'm a visionary, but I'm also detailed.
Yeah.
There aren't a lot of people that are like that. You're either a visionary or you pay attention to details, and there's not much of a crossover. But I'm one of those that is. And I think that's my unique skill that I was born with, because I'm also a multitasker. And the more I do, the more effective I am. Because if I do only a couple of things, then I procrastinate.
So your back has to be against the wall to a certain degree, right? Just
exactly. But I also don't like to be caught up in crisis management. And when we don't have a good plan, and you don't have someone who is heading up that vision, then it's easy to get sidetracked because you're managing crises every day.
Yeah.
And so you never get to move forward on what you want to have happen because you're putting out fires constantly. And that's why it's so important to back up meet with the people, find out what the people want, and then bring it into the government and try to make that happen by bringing the right people together. There are models across the country where small towns have created huge differences and became like models. We don't have to reinvent things. I'm a firm believer in looking what is out there and how can we bring that in and make it Norte County and work for us here. And I think that, it's time. It's time in education. It's time in economic development. It's time in just bringing people together because there's so much ugly in the world. And it's important.
I wanted to maybe use that as a way to segue into a couple of other issues that I'm really interested in. One is homelessness, and the other one is law enforcement here in the community. And so it seems, and there has been some progress, the legacy is a really good thing. It's an effort to actually get some people into some stable housing. Hooray. There are also a lot more people in this community who, chronically, year after year after year, have nowhere to live. And it seems like it's so difficult to move forward on that in any meaningful way. And I'd like to get your thoughts on that, and maybe your thoughts on how some progress could be made.
Okay, I want to address that. I'd like to do law enforcement first because I've actually
that's
done
fine,
some
because,
homework
that's another
on that.
big issue
Yes.
too. No, absolutely.
And so I think that things are aligning because I have had a brief conversation with Chief Griffith. I've had a conversation with our incoming sheriff,
Garrett Scott,
and I've touched bases with the Representative Jason from the correction officers. This is a unique time because these individuals are not arrogant. They truly care about the community. They want to do something good. What a unique opportunity. They seem willing and open to listen and want to create the change that's necessary in the community. That's unique. And I'm really excited about working with those individuals because you have to have law enforcement is critical in the success of a community. And how that law enforcement interacts with the people is important. The incoming sheriff, he said, well, I really want to figure out what's this thing between Klamath and, Crescent City. What is that disconnect? And I said, well, it's resources and people, because the sheriff has focused on Crescent City because the major population lives here, not in Klamath. And so we're like a stepchild. We're the last thought of in Klamath. And so it's difficult to get anyone to come down there to respond to a crime, or when they do, it's not handled in the most effective manner. And so him saying, I'd be willing to go down there and just have coffee to meet with individuals, to, be hanging out just at Pimay and see, and be able to talk to people who live there. And that's unique. He already knows, he's done his homework, he already knows there's an issue. What's the disconnect there? And he wants to do something about it. I think that our jail, I understand, is
a mess,
and it's falling apart. So there are two issues there. One, the facility itself, and our Senator Feinstein went after $3 million. That won't even touch what's needed to happen there. So we really have to go after additional dollars to support that. The other thing is, how do we provide actual meaningful services so the same people don't ending up in the jail again? And that piece is missing. So the other thing that I see is that our officers need cultural training, and they also need de-escalating. I know that Apperson had wanted to address that, but never got to have that training happen. I think that's critical for us. And so I hope I mentioned that to him. I hope that happens, and how that happens. I'm going to use whatever resources I can and tap, places where ask for my friends' help. Can you pay for this? Because it's important enough to make a huge change in the attitude and what's happening in the county by making that available. So I'm excited about law enforcement. There is not enough money. Our officers do not make competitive wages to keep them here or to attract officers to come work here. Unless you want to live here because of the beauty of this area and everything we have to offer through our natural resources, you're not going to come because it's not enough to really support your families. And I know Measure Art has helped that a little, but they're still way underpaid. And to me, there needs to be some reform. I think good people are coming into play. I think sitting with them, and you just need one person to make a difference. That leader can make all the difference.
Well, hopefully, because that leader has a lot of difference to be made. And
he's from here. Huh? He's from here.
Right.
He grew up here. Mm-hmm. And I think that will be helpful.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, it seems like it's a real opportunity because, as you're well aware, we just had the person who's currently running the Sheriff's Department, Lieutenant Schneck, saying in front of the Board of Supervisors that the department is on the verge of not even being able to provide 24/7 law enforcement because of all of the staffing and other problems that have been happening apparently for a while. And I guess where I'm trying to get with this is this an opportunity to perhaps not think in the same terms that have always been pursued, which is, well, let's just get more money and throw more money, and then we can, if we pay more money than anybody else, then we can hire a whole bunch of officers, whereas maybe it's an opportunity to talk in terms of not just law enforcement, but public safety.
Yes.
Right? Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
It's the number one concern. Everybody, we all deserve public safety. We all deserve to feel safe in our communities and to know that if there is a crisis, someone's going to be there to respond. And so public safety is what drives us. I think the unique opportunity is if you have a good leader in there, he will attract and will be looking for a certain kind of officer. And he can now, because they lost a lot to retirement and just whatever else is going on over there, to recreate something, to make it different, to look different, to better meet the public safety needs of the community. And I think that it would be smart for him to meet with community and find out what the community wants, what the areas of concern from the community have been in the past, and what their vision and what they would like to see our public safety look like. And I think then that's his job to then have the department emulate what the people want. And to be able to be in that unique position, that's exciting, should be for him, to be able to shape, because they haven't had leadership, and a lot of people have left. It's a time that he can shape what that's going to look like. And, I would love to be a part of that. As a supervisor, I'd love to be a part of sitting down with our, heads of our law enforcement and talking about that. And as I hear more from, my precincts in my district, and of course the county at large, because once I'm sitting there, I'm not only representing the people who voted for me, but the people who don't vote and the rest of the county, because my decisions will impact everyone. And so, I'm hoping that attitude will also help for mold and support those law enforcement entities, that they can look at, this is a great opportunity. Let's work together. Let's create, some real change for our community.
It is 7 minutes past 11. You're tuned to KFUG LP Crescent City, 101.1 FM online, kfugradio.org. Paul Kritz with you, Mike Thornton, KFUG News Director, and we've got Susan Masten, who is, I guess, will be later this week, supervisor from District 5. I'm sorry, I interrupted. What were you going to say?
No, I was saying I'll be the supervisor once I'm installed.
Right.
I'm just an appointee now.
just a lowly
supervisor
appointee.
in waiting.
Yeah. So next meeting, it's not tomorrow, right? We have another, is it next week?
It's next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday, that'll be, and you will be expected to be sitting right up there. Okay. There's a couple of things I've talked with supervisors over the years, and there seems to be a couple of different approaches to being a supervisor. There's the approach that is, and I think I probably know how you'll answer this, but there's the approach where, I'm the bull in the china shop, and it's people voted for me because I have this perspective, I have this worldview, and I'm here to stand up for that staunchly, regardless of what's going on in the room around me. And then there are other people who run for office and are elected, and their primary motivation is to represent their constituency. And even if the desires of their constituency might not mesh with their own personal desires, that's their job. And most politicians, I assume, are kind of a mix of both, although we have had kind of some polarizing politicians here lately. Where do you stand? Where are you on that spectrum?
Well, of course, I'm beginning to read my supervisor's manual. I've already started to do that.
Oh, God, I want a copy of that.
And
can we?
Is that a public document?
Yeah, right?
I'm assuming they would have read it. And in there it says that, it's just a common good sense that you respect each other and your opinions. And in my opinion, I would listen to everyone, because then you're going to make a good decision and you consider all things. If we all are thinking the same thing, we are not going to be addressing, meeting the needs of our people. We're going to just be yesing things, and you're not going to represent everyone that way. So in my opinion, if you are extreme over here, I'm going to listen to what you have to say, and I'm going to try to address what the real issue is. And sometimes it's not clear. You really can't see at the first statement what the real issue is. Mm-hmm. And my job would be trying to figure out what's the real issue and how do we address that so that we can all consider all things and make the best decision. And you can't do that unless you respect what everyone has to say. If you're it's not my job to say, oh, you're terrible and your ideas suck. That's
my job.
Yeah. So mine is to look for how do we reach a consensus on for the common good. Mm-hmm. And so that's important to me, to be able to hear what those differences are and try to address what those are, because then you truly represent the people, because you have considered everything and you've made the best decision you can based on what everyone has to say.
I don't want to lose the question about homelessness.
Yes, I can do that.
I do want to ask you something else because of what you've just talked about. So we do have a former county supervisor who is now a columnist at the Triplicate, who, in my opinion, seems to live for injecting poison and controversy and division into this community, who also had some things to say about your appointment. I'm sure you've read them. How does a community deal with someone like that?
Well, I think that everyone has their opinions and has a right to their opinion. I have talked with, I'm assuming you're talking about Supervisor Gitlin.
Absolutely.
And I've had an interview with him. I felt he was fair. I've had conversations with him. I value his contributions because I think there are people who have same concerns. I want to hear what those are to better understand, because everyone's voice is important. And so I think it's my job to ensure that everyone has all of the information so they can make good decisions. That's my role, to provide all the information so you can make a good decision. I want to hear from people like him because they are residents of the county and have some value for issues. And while we might not always agree what that looks like, that's the American way. We have the freedom to say and express ourselves in any way that we feel. It's my job to be responsible for how I behave and how I interact and what I say. And we each have that responsibility. And I respect every opinion, and I will listen because there will be value in that, because he lives here, he cares about this area. So there are things that he has to say that will be part of a solution for this county. And so I'm not closed off to anyone. Anything that is going to help me in my job, I'll approach. If you hate me, I'm going to work hard for you, even if you hate me, because I represent you. I'm going to work as hard for you if you voted for me or didn't vote for me, because that's my job, is to represent everyone. And so I look at it differently. I just feel that everyone has a right to say and has something to contribute for the common good.
We're speaking with Susan Masten, who has been newly appointed, perhaps to be sworn in on Friday, to be Del Norte County's 5th District Supervisor, and you are tuned to KFUG LP, Crescent City. So, Susan, we were going to talk about homelessness, and I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Okay. Well, we have a crisis for housing in general. If I found a job here and looked for a home to buy or to rent, I would not be able to find it. Mm-mm. And that's going to hamper us from being able to succeed here. So we have got to find solutions. We have a lot of bed and breakfasts popping up, and that's a way for people to make money. So apparently they're making some good money, or we wouldn't have so many. But it also is hindering what we have available for people to rent or live in. And so we need to focus some energy on how we're going to address that. What are we going to do about it? Are there ordinances or policies we need to consider to be able to promote?
Is it and I don't know the numbers, but is it your contention that it is like the Airbnb revolution, that's actually a contributing factor to scarcity?
I think it is. We have a lot of Airbnb homes in the area, and even in Klamath we have a lot, and that's the enterprising way. You're going to look for wherever the market is and for you to be able to make money. So that's a good thing. But at the same time, we have a responsibility to ensure that, people who want to live here and want to raise their families here can find a home and can rent a home or buy a home. And so we're going to need to address that. And I have just begun to look into it. As far as the homeless go, there are a lot of things that need to happen with that. There are, we have a huge mental health issue, and I am extremely concerned about the mental health of our children and of our families. And COVID made it worse, much worse, and we do not have the capability to meet those needs. And the homeless, a lot of them need mental health services. And there are some that want to be homeless, and I don't know how we're going to address them. We need to have a thorough discussion with the homeless to figure out, how did you get here? There's a lot of different reasons, and we are going to have to be extremely creative about how do we provide for services or help in getting them back on track. For those who really want to get on track, what can we do to support that, to alleviate some of the pressure from the homeless? But there's, I'm really interested in, and that could help it by pulling our agencies and our governments together to look at what are the programs and services that we have, because we've been putting a lot of money out there, and we're not creating change. So we have to look differently at how we're addressing those issues. And in my opinion, sitting down, and a model that I have wanted to use is, it's actually a Maori model where they actually take a family that's not succeeding, that may be dysfunctional, and they wrap around the services so that the parents actually set life goals, and they assign a coach. Doesn't have to be a staff person, it could be a community person, a coach that helps them and is there if that person, they need help or need to just bounce ideas or just need something. What is the child care we can provide to that family? What you just need to look at what resources are out there and how do we use volunteers or whatever else. I'm for how do you bring those pieces together to support. If we can do that, then they get their GED or they go to college or they, do whatever it is they need to do. And, they're not on drugs or alcohol. They're getting the support services they need. Their children are, in school. They're getting what they need. And then you create real change because that family turns around. That breaks the cycle of generational.
Right.
It's a preventative model is what I'm hearing you talk about.
Yes, and one that doesn't take very long to create that change. So you're not investing like pumping in this money that's making no change. It's how we do business that needs a change. The structure that we have does not meet the need, and so something has to change. And so what does that model look like? And how do we, bring that here? The same within the schools. The public school system, that model isn't working. It's not being successful. And so, Geneva and I created a charter school.
Right.
That model, well, it's not there anymore, but that model was very successful for the very bright and the one falling through the cracks and everyone in between. But we partnered with the tribe and the community college, and we had students graduate with their AA and high school diploma at the same time.
Oh, wow.
They changed every child that came into that school within 3 months, immediately turned around, had more confidence, was driven, had success. It was a different model that fit. And that's what we need to do for our children.
Do you mind me asking what happened with Grecker?
What happened was then it it went through different changes in leadership, and it came down to funding.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Because there were a couple of youth that I had encountered through like YTA and some other things here. And I heard nothing but wonderful stuff about their experience there.
The model worked, and it was looking at a model from a school where all the children were failing. And so the superintendent and the community got together and created that model that we used, and then every student went to college.
Wow.
So you can do some real change, and it doesn't always take money to create those changes. But we know that right now, throwing money at a problem does not create a solution.
Changing the system
Changes.
can
Yes.
provide for quality and longer term improvement. I do want to ask about your position on transitional housing for people who are homeless, because I know there's been more than one group over the years that have been trying to get some sort of short-term transitional housing project going, and it just seems like it never happens.
Well, there hasn't really been, that I know of, a successful model. And I think it has a lot to do with how it's set up, where it's set up, and what are those services and changes that you're providing to the individuals who are there. And so I think that as you look for housing, that it's real important that you have those discussions, because the same model is true with you putting someone in there. If you don't give if there is no goals that individual has,
Well, yeah.
or
And what are you transitioning
Sure.
to?
Yes,
Right.
yes. And so I think that that's been the problem. And so community members are not wanting to have transitional housing in their neighborhood. So, and
oh, that's you. Fancy.
Sorry about that. Are not wanting to have people there, but well, the reason doesn't have to do with anything except for you're going to put these people here and you aren't providing them anything so they can be successful.
Right. There's no
issue.
Path out.
Yes.
Right.
And that's what they fear, because you're bringing them this element into the community and their neighborhood, and you don't have anything there to support them. And so they're not going to succeed, and they're worried about, are you bringing drugs? Are you bringing alcohol? Are you bringing, a sex offender? What are you bringing there is the fear. But I also heard them say there's nothing to support them. They need, hands-on, someone there who lives there, who, supports it, so that those individuals can be successful. And that was their main concern. It wasn't, and I was really surprised because they were adamant against having them there. But it was more about they don't have the support network they need.
Well, and one model that appears to be successful is Hope Village out of Medford, who have come here on a couple of occasions to actually make presentations to the Board of Supervisors and City Council, I believe. But if you can't just put a space and say, well, just go be there, and then nothing happens there. And I guess the part of me, and I'm not saying this to you, I'm just saying it because I feel like I need to say it. People are concerned about drugs and crime and sex offenders and all of that stuff. That's already there. These people are already in our community.
That's a lot. Yeah.
They're just wandering from place to place and bush to bush. So so there is that too.
It is, and that's true, and they live in our communities anyway.
And they live in our communities,
which is the bigger problem that we need to address.
So, what do you do as we move into? We've got a while. We've been doing this for about 55 minutes. We typically don't ask more than an hour from any guests. So, just working toward wrapping up here, and I'll ask Mike if he's got any other questions he wanted to pursue.
I don't. Those were there's a million questions.
Yeah, right.
And it's probably fair to at least let you get in the job.
Yeah. We were also talking earlier today what a unique opportunity you have. You can get into this, find out whether or not you really want the job. See you withdrawn from the race. I don't see that happening, but at least get some real on the job experience. Is there anything that we didn't ask you that you'd like to make sure gets said about either your upcoming stint as supervisor and or your campaign?
Well, I also just want to say I'm really humbled, and I'm very excited, and it's wonderful to have people who believe in you and who support you, and but I'm also looking forward to meeting everyone else because, I want them to believe in me because when we're a team, we're going to be able to make things happen that are going to make a difference for our community. And so I'm excited about the opportunities that there. It's not going to be worse than the politics I've been involved before. And I have, when I first started out, there were like 500 people that were screaming and hollering. And it's more about when you don't have all the information, and you're not part of the solution. If we take the time to, there's so much expertise out there that goes untouched that could help us to make a difference. And so I'm really interested about hearing from those people and getting commitments from them to help make this change. Because nothing changes in a community unless it is driven by the community. And so I am excited about that piece of empowering people to be a part of the solution and to be there to support whatever that is to make it a reality.
Wonderful. Susan Masten, soon to be acting, is that the term? You'll be acting, appointed?
No, appointed. I'll be a supervisor.
I'm not acting. Yeah, you're not a placekeeper.
I will be.
You are supervisor. No acting about it.
As soon as I take that oath of office, I will be the supervisor.
We'll be supervisor. No asterisk by the name, nothing like that.
No act to it. It'll be the real deal.
But I will still be a candidate, and I still have to... and so it works out good because I'm going to be doing what I would have been doing as a candidate as the supervisor.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
it's the same. It's the same approach. It would be me going out to talk to the people who live here.
Sure.
And we look forward to you taking part. I believe it's the 10th of May is the candidate forum that we had lined up for, and there's still some candidates I haven't heard back from, but you are not one of them. You will be there for the candidate forum on the 10th of May at the United Methodist Church. We'll be airing all of that live and posting it online, all sorts of things like that too. So keep an ear out for that. Susan, thank you so very much for coming in today and talking with us. We look forward to seeing what happens next.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk with you and for people who live in this community to be able to hear from me. So thank you so much.
Okay, is the lodge open?
It's not open.
Okay.
So my husband had a knee operation.
That'll slow you
down. We were holding off to see how fast he recovers from that.
Okay.
Because he's the assistant to the cook, and he plays a critical role.
Yeah, that's it.
And so we're trying to target the end of the month or the 1st of May.
Okay. All right. Well, I will certainly keep an ear out for that because that's a fun time.
Yeah.
That's
thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Susan Masten, thank you so very much for coming in and talking with us about your vision for Del Norte. And yeah, this is fun. This is the first thing for election season.
That's right. Yeah.
This will be. It starts.
Off to a good start.
Flash. The sun did not rise this morning. Large cracks have been seen in the earth and rocks are reported falling from the skies. More details in 30 minutes on KFUG.